Morning all of you. Now today, in continuation with the same chapter, the rise of nationalism in Europe, we will do the unification of Italy, page 20, 4.2. Now, just like Germany, Italy had been politically fragmentized, means it was in fragments, not in one whole but in pieces. So it has a long history of being politically divided, and so Italians as a result were scattered over many dynastic empires as well as also over the multinational Habsburg Empire. Now this Habsburg Empire, it comprised of Austria, Hungary, Bohemia, Slovakia, Slovenia, Croatia, parts of Poland, some parts of Russia, and even some parts of Italy. So Italians were scattered over so many dynasties, and some parts of Italy were also under the control of the Habsburg emperors. Now during the middle of the 19th century, it means the time when we are talking about, it was divided into 7 states, and out of these 7 states, only one, that is Sardinia Piedmont, it was ruled by an Italian princely house. Otherwise the 6 of the states were ruled by other dynasties, and the north was under the Austrian Habsburg kings. Then the center was ruled by the Pope, and the southern regions, the southern kingdoms, were under the domination of the Bourbon kings of Spain. So Italy divided into 7 states, only one state under the control of the Italian princely house, that was Sardinia Piedmont, and the rest were under the control of different dynasties and different kings. And even the Italian language, that also had not acquired one common form, but in different places it had different dialects and different forms. Now during the 1830s, we have already studied about Mazzini, that he tried to put together a program so that Italy could be unified into one republic, and he also had formed a secret society which was called Young Italy for the dissemination, means for the spread, widespread of his goals. But you know, the uprising which the Italians brought about in 1831 and also in 1848, they were both crushed and they were both a failure, and so now the mantle, means now the responsibility of uniting Italy, it fell on Sardinia Piedmont, and with its ruler Victor Emmanuel II. So now the responsibility was Victor Emmanuel II and Sardinia Piedmont to unify the Italian states, and that could be done through war. Now because you know the other states were under the control of different empires, now why will they give up their land which was under their control? So the only way was that it could be done through war. Now in the eyes of the ruling people, the elites, the nobles, now a unified Italy, now it meant that there could be more economic development as well as political domination over other states in Europe. So now what they thought, that if Italy is unified, then there will be more development also in their country, as well as they could have dominance, political dominance over others in Europe. And so their chief minister Cavour, he led this movement to unify Italy, and Cavour, he was neither a revolutionary and nor he was a democrat, so he was none, and he was just a member of a wealthy educated Italian elite family. So he belonged to the noble family, and he was very wealthy and educated member, and he spoke French. So though he was living in Italy, but still he spoke French better than he did Italian, because the diplomat language was supposed to be French at that time. So he spoke French much better than he did Italian, and what he did through a very tactful diplomatic alliance. So what he did, without going into a war, he got into an alliance with France, got their help and support and assist and their assistance, and then Sardinia Piedmont, with the help of France, was successful in defeating the Austrian forces in 1859. And So they were already held by their own troops, they had their own army to help, but in addition to that they also had some volunteers, armed volunteers, and this was under the leadership of Giuseppe Garibaldi. And so apart from their regular troops, they also had the support of armed volunteers under the leadership of Giuseppe Garibaldi. And so in 1860 they marched into the southern Italy and the kingdom of the Two Sicilies, and they succeeded in winning the support of the local farmers there, and in order to drive out the Spanish rulers. So the southern was ruled by the Spanish Bourbon kings, and so the troops along with these armed volunteers, they also got the help of the local peasants, and this together they were able to drive out the Spanish rulers. So in 1864 Victor Emmanuel II, he was proclaimed king of unified Italy, but much of the Italian population, they were illiterate at that time, and so they did not know what was liberalism and what was nationalism, and all this ideology they did not know. And the masses, the peasant masses, means the farmers who supported Garibaldi in southern Italy, they have never heard the name of Italia, so they did not know what it was, and they believed that La Italia was Victor Emmanuel's wife. They did not know that they were talking about the state of Italy, but they thought that when they were talking about Italia, Italia, La Italia, so they thought that they were fighting for Victor Emmanuel's wife. So that was the unification of Italy. Let's move on to the case of Britain. Why is this called a strange case of Britain? Let's see. Now, the way in which Britain, it became a nation state, some scholars say that that is the correct idea, or the correct model of a nation state is that of Great Britain. Now in Britain, the nation state was not formed because of a sudden upheaval. Now that upheaval could be a revolution also. So in Britain, it was not the result, the unification of Britain, it was not a result of a sudden upheaval or a revolution, but it was a long drawn out process which it took years. And earlier, before the 18th century, there was no British nation as such, and basically they had some islands, they had some British isles were there, and some were like isles, basically we're talking about islands. So like they were English, Welsh, Scottish people and Irish people, and so all of these ethnic groups, they had their own culture and their own traditions also, but as an English nation, they grew steadily in power, in wealth, in education and importance. So they were able to influence their power over the rest of the islands. And the English Parliament, they got so powerful that they took over power from the monarchy in 1688 at the end of a protracted conflict. Now protracted means long lasting, or which existed for a long time. So the English Parliament, they seized power after a long conflict with the monarchy, and in 1688, and so by this they were able to form a nation state with England at its center. Then the Act of Union 1707, which was between England and Scotland, it resulted in the formation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And so now what it meant, that English or England was more powerful than Scotland, and so they were able to even put influence or pressure on the Scottish people, and the British identity, the British power and influence, it grew so much that the Scotland's distinctive, their culture, their tradition, their political institutions, they were suppressed by the English. And the Catholics who lived in the Scottish mountains, they had to suffer terrible repression whenever they tried to ask for or demand for their independence or fight for their independence, or whenever they had an uprising for independence, they were terribly repressed. And the Scottish Highlanders, means the Scottish people who lived in the mountains, the highlands, they were told not to, they were forbidden, they were asked not to speak in their Gaelic, in their language, and they were not even allowed to wear their national dress. And a large number of Scottish people, they were forcibly driven from their homes. Now Ireland was left and it also suffered a same fate, and now Ireland was deeply divided among the Protestants and the Catholics. Now English are basically more of Protestants, so the English helped the Protestants who were living in Ireland to establish their dominance over a Catholic dominated country. Means in Ireland they were the population of Catholics were more as compared to Protestants, but England being a Protestant country, so they supported the Protestants who were living in Ireland to have their dominance over the Catholic people. And the Catholics, they revolted against the British dominance, but they were suppressed. And then Wolfe Tone and his United Irishmen in 1798, they also attempted a revolt, but it failed. And then Ireland, it was forcibly incorporated into the United Kingdom in 1801. And so now a new British nation, it was formed, and this was through the propagation of the English tradition, culture, language, and the symbols of New Britain, the British flag, that is the Union Jack, the national anthem, and the English language, they were promoted more. And the other nations, they simply survived as subordinate partners in this union. So all did not have the same power, but English, they asserted their dominance over the rest of their partners. Now like the name of Wolfe Tone came here, and many times what happens, students, they miss out, and I have seen that questions have come that who is Wolfe Tone, or who was Wolfe Tone, and most of the students they did not know the answer, because you know it is just in the paragraph and they miss it just like that. So what I mean to say is that you need to be very careful while you are reading the chapters, so that you don't miss out anything. Like the Junkers I told you, the large landowners of Prussia, you need to know who were the Junkers, and you need to know that who was Wolfe Tone. Okay, so let's move on. And visualizing the nation, page 23. Now you know, to when we want to represent a person or a ruler, now that is very easy, because you can get a portrait done or a statue made, and that is it. But how can one give face to a nation? You know, at that time, talking about nation, now it was an abstract idea. Okay, what is abstract? Abstract idea? Who will tell me?
An idea which we can feel, we can think of, but we cannot touch.
Alright, so you cannot touch, we cannot see, alright, and so it is something we can talk about, we can feel, but not something which you can means you cannot touch it, you cannot see it with your physical eyes. So how about how to give a face to a nation? So artists in the 18th and the 19th century, they found out a way, and this they tried to do by personifying a nation. What is personification? Come on, class 10th. It is a figure of speech. Personification. It could be not only the things of nature, any idea. Alright, means things which are not human, but you gave them the attributes of a human. Okay, and so what the artists in the 18th and 19th century did, they gave a face to the nation by personifying it. And so now in other words, what we want to say is that the country or the nation was represented as if it was a person, just like you know Bharat Mata. So the nation of India was personified as a female figure of Bharat Mata. So in the same way, nations were then portrayed as female figures, and this female form, it was chosen to personify a nation, but you know, it did not stand for any particular or any specific woman. Now what they took, the form they took, it did not personify or it did not mean a particular woman in real life, but it was just a way to give a concrete form to an abstract idea. Concrete is what you can see with your natural eyes, what you can touch. So they gave this women or female form to the idea of a nation just to give it a concrete form, and that is how the female figure, it became the allegory of the nation. And you know, when we were doing French Revolution, then you can recall that artists, they also gave means some concrete forms to ideas of liberty, justice and republic, and the attributes of liberty. Now it was shown by a red cap or a broken chain, and while you know, justice is normally portrayed as a blindfolded woman carrying a pair of scales. So this was already been done, and so in the same way, similar female allegories, they were invented by the artists in the 19th century to represent the nation. And in France, this woman, this female form, it was christened, means it was given the name of Marianne, and that was a popular Christian name in France. And why they took a popular name? That because they wanted to say and tell and portray that this nation belongs to the common people, all right, that it is a people's nation, the nation belongs to all the people, and that is why they took a popular Christian name, Marianne. And the characteristics of Marianne, they were also drawn from those of liberty and republic. And so she has the red cap, the tricolor, and the cockade. Now cockade is a rose shaped ornament, and if you see in figure 16, there you can see on the side she is wearing on her hair this cockade. It is a rose shaped ornament. Okay, then statues of Marianne, they were erected in public places so that the people can look at it and they can be reminded that this is a symbol of national unity, and that was also so that the people can identify with it, with the form of the nation. And the images of Marianne, they were marked on coins and stamps also. And in the same way, Germania, she became the allegory of the German nation. And in visual means in form, Germania, she wears a crown of oak leaves. See figure 17, and the oak, it stands for heroism in Germany. So today we'll end here, and when we meet the next time, we'll finish just a little bit which is left. Or just a small portion is left, and we have time also. So what do you think? Should I continue or should I end here and do nationalism and imperialism? I think we'll stop here, and the remaining part we will do in the next class. So whatever have we done today, have you understood? Is it clear? What? Sure? All right. And listen, like I told you, this chapter would be there for your half yearly, so you need to prepare this chapter and start reading the chapter, learning from the book. All right, and when we meet in the next class, then I will finish off this small portion that is left, and we will also do the questions. All right, all of you.